Good afternoon again, Church. This is my tribute to my father. I cannot begin to imagine not having you, Dad, on the end of the phone or popping around at the moment's notice to assist or air your views on an issue. I've worked with you closely and gracefully for 38 years. I have celebrated with you every success, great or small. Our relationship moved from father, son, to best friends. You have been the greatest cheerleader for me and my family. Thank you for being there to celebrate every milestone that my children have gone through. Dad was hardworking, compassionate towards everyone, and deserved the success and accolades that he enjoyed. He taught me many things, but I think most importantly, he gave us the ability to know that if you really put your mind into something, success becomes obvious. And never to be afraid to give anything a go. His attention to detail and perfection was infectious, and once in a while, it would get me into trouble with him. He was a very clever and humorous man who was never afraid of having a good laugh when the moments called for it. His passion for investment and service to people in his retirement gave him many happy hours, despite his failing health. Dad was incredibly practical and bubbly, with creative ideas, and we are so lucky that he passed on so much of his knowledge and skills to us. Rest in peace, Papa. Lastly, I am deeply humbled by Mom's strength over the last few years, for a few days, and her ability to focus on the amazing life she shared with my dad, and not dwell on what she has lost. I hope that through this, I can find strength from her example and be there whenever she needs me. Thank you, Church.
Your Eminence, Bishop Emeritus Peter Cairo, we're in your home now. Your Excellency, the Deputy President and fellow son of Mathira, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Your Excellency, the Governor of Nyeri, Honorable Senator, Honorable CS, Honorable Member of Parliament for Mathira, all dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. I stand here to give my tribute, and I think you will all understand that I stand not just representing myself and Patrick, who's here, but also representing our two brothers who Dad rejoined on the 14th of December, who cannot be here to speak for themselves. I'm going to have a very short tribute that'll be broken into three parts. First part is to talk about how we experienced Dad when we were young. Dad was a busy man, but he was always present. We knew him well, he had time for us, he pushed us in our academics. He was very caring, but it should be said that probably like most African fathers of the day, he was not what I would refer to as soft and cuddly. That came out later with his grandchildren. I recall a few months ago seeing my young daughter, Goni or Gadoni, combing his hair and taking scissors out and cutting his hair. I would have never imagined cutting my dad's hair. But he smiled and asked me to be patient when I tried to stop her from doing it. Other times I'd come and see him in bed with the sheets covering him, watching cartoons with Zoe and Gadoni, and I had never watched cartoons with my dad. But I think that's what grandchildren are for. But he made time for us. Every school vacation was an adventure. He was a busy man at ICDC, and they had projects all over the country. And so every school vacation, he'd bundle us into a car and take us on one of his trips. And possibly the most important thing about those trips was not where we went, but it was building memories and things that we recall to this day of times that we spent together. I remember a road trip to Marsabit where we broke down in Lysamis and couldn't find somebody to change a tire. I remember one time we went to Mombasa. I think it was me and one of my brothers. I don't remember which one. And Dad, Mom wasn't there. And for the first time, I saw my dad cook a meal for us. But he was a very good cook. He just didn't get the opportunity to do this so frequently. Another thing that was very, very clear, and all of the family members who are here, extended family, will attest to this, was the importance of family to Mzee. Not just nuclear family, but extended family, even Mom's family. He made time for all of us. He, as my cousin Mary said a few days ago, he was always one of the first to be at a family function, and he'd be sitting there drinking, in the early days, possibly a white cap or a Pilsner, but in the latter days, a cup of tea, and he would listen to everybody and want to know what every family member was doing, and that was fantastic. And as we grew older, he was willing to leverage his network, his big and vast network, to help family members achieve whatever they wanted to achieve. The second section is to talk about our experience working with Mzee. All four of us, including the two who have departed, worked right next to Mzee for a varying number of years. Patrick, almost 40 years, and I was on the other end, possibly 4 or 5 years, given that I'd been abroad for so long. But sort of the observations that I've made, both when I was here and when I wasn't around, is that Dad was a relentlessly hard worker. He was very focused, and he was very driven. And I found him particularly, what I would describe as wickedly intelligent. He was able to grasp anything. He was an economist. I studied engineering, but we were still able to have conversations where he'd push me on some of the stuff that I was doing wherever I was working. And I found that kind of amazing. He worked and he enjoyed working. It was not a chore to him. It was not something he had to do to get anything else. He just liked to work. And he worked to the very end. He had a week break or so out of hospital in November, and he took the opportunity on November 18th or 19th, thereabouts, to chair an annual general meeting for Agricultural and Industrial Holdings. I think less than a few days later, he went back into hospital for the final time. He was a teacher, he was compassionate, and I know the eulogy says he studied commerce, but I believe he studied economics. And he was an economist to the core, in the sense that there was investments and there were returns. And so when you looked to Mzee for money, for something for consumption, something that would generate no return other than something just passing by, he suddenly didn't have any money. But on the other hand, if you came to him with a project, even if it was a grand, outlandish project where you're like, how is this going to come together? He would work right there next to you and say, hey, we need to do this. And he would call other people. He's called me many times and say, hey, Patrick wants to do this. We need to make sure that we can get it done for him. And that was it. That was Dad and his projects. So what are the lessons? This is the third point. What are the lessons? And I write about this in the tribute in the book. And I think there were three things that I can really take away from Dad. I spent a few weeks last year doing a final edit of his book, cover to cover, and I really got a lot more insights into him. And what was clear in his book, even as you can tell from the title, Born to Serve, Mzee believed in community over self. The us is more important than the me or the I. And because of his economics training, that was manifested in a large part through industrial projects. He believed that Kenya could, and all other countries, the best path to develop was through industry-led development, where you actually take something and convert it, add value, and then put it into the marketplace that can then drive consumption of your agricultural produce and all sorts of other things. And so he definitely saw that with projects you can give to the community in the way of jobs, in the way of tax, in just all sorts of good things. The second point was what I refer to as concentric mentoring. It's kind of like he mentored everybody. The closest circle was the immediate family, and then it went out, extended family, friends, whatever, sometimes even the man on the street. And he always wanted to understand, what is it that you're trying to do, and how can he help you achieve it? He made friends of all ages. I said this yesterday, I'll repeat it, about, I don't know, early 2010s. I was living in Dubai and I came home. And he drove me to Nyeri. He said, come with me, we're going to Nyeri. This is before he became ill in 2015. And went to a place just north of Chaka called White Rock. And so he come out, it was getting to be dark. And these two young men come running up to him and they hug him and they say, hey, Mzee, how are you? And he's like, so I was like, why is he hugging these young people? And he's like, no, these are my friends. This is Komo, Stephen Wero's son, and that's Mageria Warero Kanja's son. Both younger than me, significantly younger than me, but he was their friend, and he managed to build those relationships. The last point is Mzee never gave up. He had fortitude. He was indefatigable. He was fearless. There had been many disappointments, for all the businesses that still survived. There were many that didn't make it. But he gave everything his all. There's a story that Mzee's long-term driver says, his name is Simon Kabushi, I think he's from here in Yakaive. When he joined New KCC, he was driving with the directors to Eldoret. As they got in a crew, he said, drive to Kabarak. So they went to retired President Moi's house and went to the security people and said, we're here to see the retired president. He said, do you have an appointment? He said, no, but just tell him Matu Wamae is here and see if he'll see us. And they went in. Bear in mind, this business had been taken away from Moi and Moi's family. And he went to him and said, Mzee Moi, I've come to get your milk. I want you to supply your milk to KCC. And he got it. He walked out of there with commitment from President Moi that he would supply milk to KCC, and then they went off and went on to Eldoret. That is that. Finally, and this is not one of the three or the three of three, I would like to talk about Mzee's final project. It's a project that has been mentioned here today. It's a project that's just up the road. He gave half an acre of, him and Mom, gave half an acre of land that he had inherited from his parents, to the Catholic Church, to this parish. And it was important to him, and it's an important investment, and thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. You've contributed and have committed to continue to contribute to this church. But I'd like to call on all of us to join us, my mom, Patrick, myself, our children, our wives, as we do whatever we can to make Mzee's final project come to fruition. On that note, there's been an outpouring of support in the last week. There's been donations made to us. And again, we have sat down and we have said that any surplus will be added to our contribution in the Harambe or the meeting in April to try and see this church come to fruition. With that, I'd just like to end by saying thank you. Thank you, everybody. The love, the support that we received in the last week and the weeks prior to, months prior to that when Mzee was unwell, have really been touching. We feel it. Your Excellency Deputy President, you came home. Your Excellency the Governor, you came home. Other dignitaries were called on the house here. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. And if there's any way that we can give back to you and to whatever, we'll be happy to be of service. But thank you, everybody.